Wes Anderson has always been known for his intricate symmetrical settings and creating a fantasy world that lets the audience escape into a different realm depending on which of his movies you are watching. His film, The Grand Budapest Hotel, is the tale of two co-workers who form an unlikely friendship as they search for answers regarding one of Mr. Gustav's late lovers, Madame D, and clearing his name over her murder. Anderson manages to formulate meaningful stories through his structured stylistic elements, but what is the purpose of these elements in having the story be told through multiple worlds? The craft of his film creates many worlds to understand the meaning of choosing your home and the family that lives in it by looking through this lens of story within story narrative. Inside this tri-world film, the audience is able to see and understand how Zero Mustafa went from newly employed lobby boy to the most valuable millionaire in Europe, all through the Grand Budapest Hotel and the guests and workers that walk through its halls. The film is first introduced with a young girl in a drab cemetery paying homage to the author of the book she is holding in her hands titled The Grand Budapest Hotel. As the scene transitions from her looking at the picture of the author on the back of the book to the author in his office, it is seen that the viewers of the film are the audience of the girl reading the book, making this the establishing first world. One can assume that when the setting takes place in the author's office, the plot has switched to being inside the book, and the viewers are watching him recite the very lines to the introduction of the novel.
The incidents that follow were described to me exactly as I present them here.
The author's audience then becomes the girl in the cemetery. As both audiences go further into the plot, it takes a leap into the story of how the Grand Budapest was put into the hands of Mr. Mustafa.
It was the first that struck one as being deeply and truly lonely.
This sets the stage for the second world. Zero Mustafa begins to narrate his story of Mr. Gustav. This then takes all audiences, including the author, the girl in the cemetery, and the viewers of the film, to the third world, which is most seen throughout the film. All three worlds are placed into the film to allow a deeper insight into the bonds that the people can form within each other. The girl forms a connection with the author throughout the book, the author creates a link through Mr. Mustafa and his story, and Zero with the attachment he makes with Gustav and Agatha when he was left with no one. The flow of this narrative can be foreshadowed by the poems that Mr. Gustav recites throughout the film.
While questing once in noble wood of grey medieval pine, I came upon a tomb, rain-slicked, rubbed cool, ethereal, its inscription long vanished, yet still within its melancholy fissures.
Can reveal that the tomb is a metaphor for the forthcoming events of Madame D being murdered. Continuing with the storyline, Gustav also recites,
A flower. I am reminded of a verse. The painter's brush touched the inchoate face by ends of nimble bristles, and with a flush...
Just before the meeting regarding her will, she gives her most admirable friend
the painting known as Boy with Apple.
Wow!
By Johannes van Huytel.
I can't believe it.
One of the last poems that is recited is by Zero's wife, Agatha.
Whence came these two radiant celestial brothers united for an instant as they crossed the stratosphere of our starry window? One from the east and one from the west.
As she recites these words of brotherhood, it can overall summarize the hardships and triumphs that Zero and Gustav face together. All of these poems can be seen as a guide throughout Mr. Mustafa's story. The film centers itself around the stolen painting, Boy with Apple, and this painting is a reflection of Mr. Gustav and his efforts to remain youthful, and the apple represents all the yearnings that he holds within himself. Even when Gustav was put in prison and stripped of the life he once had at the Grand Budapest, he still managed to keep himself presentable at all times and create connections wherever he went. The youthfulness causes him to want to form bonds in any lonely situation. The painting Boy with Apple was eventually hung behind the concierge desk as remembrance of Mr. Gustav. The hotel itself was an intricate piece of the story as it was the central setting of the entire film. Any hotel is designed to be a home away from home, but with the overseeing guidance of Mr. Gustav, he centered his work and the work of his co-workers to develop a place not only for themselves, but the ones who can't seem to find their way home.
Family?
Zero.
All the main characters in the film, other than Madame D, are without a family. Mr. Gustav never mentions any family and fills his time with his seasonal guests, and Zero lost his family due to the war, and in his later years, lost his wife Agatha and their child to a disease. The Grand Budapest was a gateway for the characters to create a home within the hotel and form relationships within its walls. With all these components and perspectives of storytelling, poems to guide the narrative along, and stylistic elements that reveal a deeper insight to the worlds that are set in the film, the Grand Budapest Hotel was a place for the lonely, the lost, and there in this grand hotel, they all found each other.